Head out to just about any Australian town on a Friday night and you'll no doubt come across some mid-pubescent rascal in an overpowered bucket producing noises like a can of old bolts as he revs it at the lights. There goes the clutch. While this whole thing with testosterone-fueled yahoos driving like maniacs might feel like a thoroughly modern phenomenon, it's anything but. In fact, you're about to hear about someone who might just go down as the first truly terrible driver in Queensland history. And it didn't just end with the bloom of youth.
Now, at first there were no licensing for drivers or motor vehicles. Then cars were registered, drivers were registered, and in January 1923 we got a system like the one we have today with the introduction of the Licence for the Drivers of a Motor Vehicle Act. When these licences were introduced, it took just days before Toowoomba had the honour of getting the first prosecution under Queensland's new driver's licence laws. Now, Brisbane's first prosecution was on the 23rd of January against a man who was found driving a motor car without a driver's licence, the fine being 10 shillings, 3 shillings and 6 court costs. And Brisbane, of course, claimed the honour of being first, as they always do. But it was actually trumped by Toowoomba by 11 days. That's because on Thursday, the 12th of January, the first prosecution was quietly processed in the Toowoomba Police Court. It was 21-year-old Mr. Roland Richard Carey of Stewart Street in Toowoomba.
Okay, so this poor boy got done just a few days after the first licensing rules came into existence. Fined 5 shillings and 3 and 6 costs for riding a motorcycle without a licence. Easy mistake, right? Well, as you're about to hear from History Out There blog master Harold Peacock, a renowned leadfoot in his own right, the ensuing decades of terrible road behaviour would suggest that this was more than a mere oversight.
Now, Carey went on to become one of the most troubled Queensland drivers in those early days, and you've got to wonder why he persisted driving at all. His woes began shortly after his historic conviction, but it didn't involve a motor vehicle at all. Carey was working as a machinist when he sustained a compound fracture and lacerated wounds to his ring finger on his left hand when it was caught in a sandpaper machine. Now, the ambulance arrived and the finger was saved. And once Carey's ring finger mended, he then got married to the organist of the Methodist Church. And after that, that's when Carey went on a driving rampage.
So there he was, gnarled-looking ring finger, recently wounded, presumably with a shiny new wedding ring on it, wrapped around the throttle, and a need that only speed could satisfy.
In 1934, he was heftily fined £4 for travelling over the speed limit at between 30 and 32 miles an hour down Margaret Street in Toowoomba. Now, that's under 50 kilometres per hour and much the same limit as today. Then in 1935, he was fined another 5 shillings with 6 shillings cost, failing to have affixed to his motor vehicle the current registration labels.
Thus reprimanded, Roland learned his lesson and kept an impeccable driving record from that day forward. Except that's not what happened. In 1937, Carey was driving a meat van for his employer, a local butcher, when he wound up in a very dangerous situation.
The van was a Chevrolet one-ton truck with S. Watson & Sons painted on the side, and on this occasion it was fully laden with 12 cubic weight or 610 kilograms of meat from the firm's slaughter yards. And of course, coming the other way was a 14 horsepower 1937 model Vauxhall car. The car experts, we can picture this happening. Now, it was being driven by William Cossard, who was a nurse at the Willowburn Mental Hospital. The two vehicles collided on the corner of West and Hill Streets. Roland's van ran off the road, narrowly missed a tree, struck a fence, knocking out one panel. Meat was spilled all over the road. The front part of the van was so seriously buckled with today, it'd absolutely be a write-off. Now, the following year, in 1938, the mental hospital nurse actually sued Carey, or more specifically his employer, claiming that Carey drove the Chevrolet van so negligently and unskillfully that he alone caused the accident. The judge agreed, and judgment was given against Roland by damages, together with court costs, for a total of £52, 9 shillings, 6pence. Now, just adding up these few incidences, Carey's driving had cost around $30,000 in today's money.
OK, Mr. Carey. Now I think you're starting to take the proverbial you-know-what. Surely this was enough to drum some sense into the lad. Surely.
His woes continued.
Bugger.
In 1954, even his son and the son's wife were taken to the Toowoomba Hospital after the car in which they were travelling overturned on the corner of Ruthven and Margaret Streets. Come 1965, Carey was aged 64, and this was 43 years after he claimed Queensland's first driver's licence at conviction. That's when he was fined for failing to give right away, because he was battling Queensland's driving laws to the bitter end. Now, Roland Richard Carey passed away in 1987, aged 86, not from a traffic accident, I'm happy to say, but from natural causes.
And there was one final insult. For all those tickets, all those fines and court dates and convictions, the authorities always made sure his details were spelled with perfect accuracy. Not so for his tombstone, which erroneously refers to Roland as Ronald.
Where his ashes are interred in Brisbane, sadly his name is incorrectly recorded, and there's certainly nothing to indicate the esteemed place that he holds in Queensland's legal history.